Coming up on our newscast, heavy rain is impacting roads, homes, and businesses. The government is doing everything possible to minimize losses and damage, with the conditions expected to continue through Thursday. South Korea's foreign minister holds talks with his Chinese counterpart. Topics would include thorny issues such as the U.S.-led chip hack and THAAD. The People Power Party is transitioning to an emergency leadership. This follows a leadership vacancy in the nation's ruling bloc.
Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. Heavy downpour continues to pound the nation. Homes and businesses flooded, cars abandoned in the streets. Authorities issued a level 3 warning aimed at preventing further damage. Lee Si-hoo starts us off.
Torrential rain has been pounding the capital region in South Korea since Monday. At times during Monday night, parts of the capital area received more than 100 millimeters of rain per hour, while some districts like Dongjaku received up to 422 millimeters overnight. In response, heavy rain warnings have been issued for most central regions as well as the provinces of Gangwon-do and Chungcheong-do. During the day on Tuesday, rain was falling at 20 to 30 millimeters per hour on average in the capital region. But the rain got heavier as the day passed. It is expected that on Tuesday night, around 100 to 200 millimeters will fall in the capital region and Gangwon-do province, but some areas could even see up to 300 millimeters. About 100 to 200 millimeters also fall in the rest of the central region in Gyeongsang-do province. But the amount of rainfall, which will continue until Thursday, will vary drastically by region. Due to the rain, at least 9 people have been confirmed dead and 6 are missing. Over 440 people were also displaced from their homes and have taken shelter at local schools and public gyms. Roads, underpasses, buildings, and bridges have been flooded. Here, the Jamsu Bridge has been closed off due to heavy downpours this week. Parts of the Olympic Boulevard and the Nabu Expressway have also been blocked, though some parts were unblocked during the day. For a time, operation of Seoul's subway line 9 was suspended and stations on line 2, 3, and 7 have been submerged. Swimming pools at all Hangang River parks have also been closed and will remain closed until the weather improves. To minimize the damage, authorities are advising people to stay away from streams and rivers that are prone to flooding. They should also refrain from visiting mountainous regions where there is a risk of landslides. Also, those going out should use public transportation rather than driving. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol called for all-out efforts to protect lives and property. He also visited sites where people living in basement flats died and ordered specific measures to prevent such incidents from happening again. Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
After some of the heaviest rainfall South Korea has ever seen, President Yoon Suk-yeol on Tuesday asked related ministries to respond with their all-out efforts. The president's remarks came at an emergency meeting which he presided over instead of his original schedule, a cabinet meeting in Sejong. Though natural disasters are inevitable, he stressed that there should be no losses of life due to human error and that the situation should be monitored thoroughly, led by the Interior Ministry.
특히 산사태 취약 지역, 저지대 침수 우려 지역, 이런 위험 지역에 대한 선제적 통제를 실시하고 기상 상황에 따른 도로 통제 정보를 국민들께 신속히 안내해서 혼란과 불편을 최소화할 수 있도록 해야 되겠습니다.
While calling for swift restoration as well as support for those affected, he added that the government must review the current disaster management system, given that downpours such as these are related to effects of the climate change. Yoon also paid a visit to a residential building in Seoul's Gwanak-gu district, where residents in the semi-basement unit died overnight due to the pouring rain.
여기는 지금 저지대입니다. 자체가 저지대다 보니까 물이 순식간에 조인천 범람이 되면은 그냥 이게 추위가 올라가면 바로 여기 가면 직격탄을.
While urging the Interior Ministry and local governments to come up with housing stability measures for the safety of those living underground, he also called for the Environment Minister to develop a water level monitoring system. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo too checked some of the damage and discussed restoration plans at the nation's flood control center. There, he emphasized how the country's capability is shown in times of crisis and ordered efforts to minimize the damage and begin restoration. He also offered consolation to around 100 residents of Guryeong village in the Gangnam-gu district, the so-called the last remaining urban slum in Seoul, who were forced to evacuate, and called for measures to protect those in areas vulnerable to flooding. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Heavy rainfall raises the risk of landslides in mountainous countries like Korea. Those living in high-risk areas must remain vigilant and evacuate quickly when there are potential warning signs. Lee Seung-jae explains further.
A massive landslide can be seen wiping out trees. This is the site of an apartment complex located in Geoje, Gyeongsang-namdo Province in September 2020. The apartment complex was built after excavating the side of a hill, but the area was not designated as being at risk from landslides.
A large rock fell, and then every 10 minutes there was a landslide before trees began falling.
This is a village where a landslide occurred after 350 millimeters of rain fell in a 2-day period last year. Due to the construction of housing nearby, there were fears that a landslide would occur. When there's torrential rain during the night, a landslide could occur as soon as early morning. While landslides are hard to prevent, experiments show that good observation of mountains can reduce damage. An experiment mimicked the effects of 50 millimeters of rain per hour being applied to terrain with an inclination of 35 degrees. This caused the area to break up, and a landslide was observed after just 10 hours. It's important to see if there are any rocks rolling down or cracks on the slopes, as that could be the early signs of a landslide. And if you spot trees tilted despite there being no strong winds present, a landslide could occur in the area. There are other signs of landslides people should watch out for. These include large amounts of water gushing down slopes, or if you hear tremors or the sound of moving earth. Such signs could mean that sloped areas are on the brink of collapsing, and hasty evacuation is needed. It's also important to know that landslides can occur even in cities. When it rains, also check the latest information from the Korea Forest Service and know evacuation routes and sites in advance. Also, when evacuating, shut off gas and electricity to prevent secondary damage from fire. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
North Korea is also impacted by the downpour. There are growing concerns about damage to crops and coal mines. According to state-run broadcast on Tuesday, heavy rain warnings have been issued in the southern part of Hwanghae-do Province, some southern region of Gangwon-do Province, and Kaesong. The regime's official Nodongshinmun newspaper dubbed the situation disastrous. It called for measures to protect farmland and prevent flooding on the Taedong River, which flows through the capital. Top diplomats of Seoul and Beijing sat down for talks on Tuesday. The two sides clarified their stance on the escalating U.S.-China tensions stemming from Taiwan, as well as Washington's potential move to ostracize Beijing in global supply chains. Kim Da-mi shares with us what was discussed.
South Korea and China must keep themselves independent and free from external obstacles and influences. That's coming from China's top diplomat Wang Yi on Tuesday, amid much heightened tension between Washington and Beijing over Taiwan, as well as the new Chip 4 semiconductor alliance.
The two sides should be aware of a win-win situation and secure a stable and smooth supply chain and industrial network. We must uphold equality and respect and not interfere in each other's internal affairs.
Beijing is also aware of Seoul's participation in the so-called Chip 4, the Washington-led semiconductor alliance involving Taiwan and Japan. This is something Beijing sees as nothing more than a grouping aimed at countering its influence in global supply chains. After meeting with Wang in Qingdao, China on Tuesday, South Korea's foreign minister once again crystallized Seoul's stance, saying that his country will seek ways to beef up cooperation with China based on national interests and shared principles.
I hope that South Korea and China cooperate for freedom, peace and prosperity around the world and in the Indo-Pacific region, beyond the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia, based on universal values.
To further upgrade their strategic partnership, Bak voiced hope that Wang visits Korea within the year and that the Chinese leader does so too at a convenient time. Carried out in a much friendly atmosphere, Wang welcomed Bak's invitation, saying that he could come to Korea to eat Korean-style Chinese food. North Korea issues also topped Tuesday's talks, where Bak once again called on China to play its constructive role so that the regime comes back to dialogue instead of pursuing its military ambitions. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
Staying with the latest in relations between Seoul and Beijing, many are curious to find out how diplomatic ties will unfold under the Yoon administration. Yoon Suk-yeol has the full story.
Ahead of the 30th anniversary of their diplomatic ties, South Korea and China are working to address diplomatic challenges. There's a list of topics that the two need to discuss thoroughly. In fact, the U.S.-led chip alliance known as the Chip 4, which also includes Japan and Taiwan, has put South Korea in a difficult position with its diplomacy with China. That's because Beijing has strongly voiced discontent, warning that it would be a mistake for Seoul to accept Washington's invitation to the Chip alliance. But despite such concerns, experts here say that China will unlikely retaliate as South Korea is home to the world's two largest memory chip makers, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix.
China is not in a situation to take retaliatory measures against South Korea if the country joins the Chip 4 alliance. This is because if China were to retaliate, it will disrupt its semiconductor supply chains as well.
But of course, there is a chance that there'll be retaliation against other sectors of the economy, which is why South Korea has stressed that joining the Semiconductor Supply Chain Consultative Body is not aimed at excluding any specific country. There's also the question of how Seoul and Beijing will address the so-called three no's. No to deploying additional terminal high-altitude area defense anti-missile system in Korea, no to participating in the U.S.-led missile defense network, and no to taking part in the trilateral military assistance with the U.S. and Japan. It's a policy carried out by South Korea's former administration, and China now wants the Yoon administration to follow suit. Experts say that Tuesday's talks will be a chance for the two to understand their differences.
The latest high-level meeting between South Korea and China is the first step to understanding each other's position. Therefore, this meeting will be a chance for the two to exchange ideas and start discussions on the three no's.
While South Korea is strengthening its alliance with the U.S., the government is also working to develop its relations with China. The latest meeting between Seoul's Foreign Minister Park Jin and his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi is therefore seen as an opportunity to advance their bilateral ties. Min Suk-yeol, Arirang News.
South Korea is joining a U.S.-led combined military drill held in Hawaii. The 5-day exercise is aimed at preventing proliferation of WMD. Bejing fills us in.
The U.S. Department of State announced Monday local time that it's hosting the Fortune Guard 22 in Honolulu, Hawaii, from Monday through Friday. It added that it'll hold live exercises to demonstrate weapons of mass destruction interdiction capabilities. 21 countries, including South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, will engage in a wide range of related activities, from whole-of-government rapid decision-making to operational interdiction, seizure, and disposition. During the drill, they will also share information on a chemical, biological, and nuclear response. The exercise will also feature expert briefs and a scenario-based tabletop discussion.
The PSI exercise is a drill aimed at preventing the illegal proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and related materials. As for South Korea, the Ministry of Defense is jointly taking part in the exercise, along with relevant ministries, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Korea Coast Guard.
The latest exercise is part of the Proliferation Security Initiative, or PSI, established in 2003 by the U.S., to stop or impede transfers of weapons of mass destruction and related items flowing to and from states and non-state actors of proliferation concern. The U.S. initiated Asia-Pacific PSI exercises in 2014. Participating countries have also hosted their own exercises, like Eastern Endeavour in South Korea, Pacific Shield in Japan, and Pacific Protector in Australia. Peunji, Arirang News.
The South Korean Foreign Ministry held a meeting to address Japan's wartime forced labor compensation issue, but the victims refused to show up. They object to the ministry having unilaterally submitted arguments to the Supreme Court, which is due to rule on the issue of compensation for them. The argument said only the Foreign Ministry would attempt to resolve the issue with Japan through diplomatic efforts. Tuesday's meeting was the third of its kind. According to a ministry official, those who attended had an in-depth discussion, but it was widely viewed as unsuccessful as the victims weren't there. The People Power Party wrapped up a multi-stage procedure to set up an emergency leadership, but it's unclear if things will go smoothly. Chairman Yoon Suk-yeol, who automatically loses his post, vows to file a court injunction. Yoo Ho-young has the latest.
The ruling People Power Party has completed its final step to switch to an emergency leadership. During a virtual meeting on Tuesday, members of the party's national committee approved five-term PPP lawmaker Joo Ho-young as the interim leader. Joo had previously served as full leader and acting chair and is considered to lack any allegiances to a particular faction. And this time he'll be leading the party at a time of emergency, initially sparked by the suspension of its chairman Yoon Suk-yeol over a sexual bribery allegation, and a series of resignations of others that followed, all of which remain as sources of controversy within the party.
The top priority is swiftly resolving the party's internal feud and division and to form a united front. A divided organization is destined to fail.
This wraps up the multiple steps that were taken over the past 2 weeks in a speedy manner amid growing concerns over declining party and presidential approval ratings.
I urge the National Committee members to make a decision to help stabilize the party, because that's the only way we can fully support the government.
The party is aiming for the leadership to kick off as early as next Wednesday, which marks 100 days since the launching of the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. Upon taking office, the Emergency Committee will finalize the exact duration. It will be either serving around 5 months and focus on overhauling the party until the end of the National Assembly's regular session, or serving a shorter term and preparing for an early national convention to elect a new full-time leadership. Meanwhile, Chairman Yoon Suk-yeol, who's essentially blocked from returning to his post, has reaffirmed his plan to file for a court injunction over Tuesday's decision. He's set to hold a press conference on Saturday to outline his plans. Young-eun, Arirang News.
President Yoon called for ways to expand the capacity of national cemeteries so that police officers and firefighters who sacrifice their lives can be buried there too. The order came following a briefing to the president on Tuesday by the Minister of Patriots and Veterans Affairs. National Cemetery is usually only for soldiers who died during battle. Normally, police and firefighters are only buried there if they died during war. Yoon also stressed the need to offer more veteran-related education for future generations to help protect South Korea's national identity, while urging officials to devise ways to improve patriots and veterans' accessibility to medical care. He also highlighted the need for stronger bonds with nations that fought in wars with South Korea. The nation's COVID-19 tally hovered near 150,000 on Tuesday, almost 90,000 more than the day before. It's the highest figure in almost 4 months. There were also 40 more related deaths. The number of severely ill patients, 364. Authorities predict the peak of the latest wave could come in late August. As cases rise, the government imported 942,000 more doses of oral COVID-19 treatments. This includes 142,000 doses of Lagavrio from Merck and 800,000 Paxlovid. All of the Lagavrio doses will arrive later this year, along with 200,000 doses of Paxlovid. The rest will arrive early next year. According to the Office of the UN High Commissioners for Human Rights, Ukraine has recorded over 12,000 civilian casualties, including 352 deaths among children between February 24th and late July. The crisis caused the worst refugee situation in Europe since World War II. Almost 6.3 million people are displaced within Ukraine and over 9.5 million people have fled the country. The South Korean unit of Save the Children has raised roughly $600,000 and helped more than 360,000 refugees, including over 200,000 children. The NGO is accepting donations through their website to help Ukraine's children and their families. Inflation in South Korea has risen to a level not seen in over 2 decades. Food is among the main driving force. Heavy rain and extreme heat has made it worse. Jung helps us look beyond the digits.
Historic downpours in Seoul and the surrounding areas are adding even more fuel to the country's skyrocketing food prices.
One local greengrocer says the hot and humid weather has made it hard to find good products to sell.
It's going to get harder to run this shop. There's nothing to sell. Most of what we see is not good quality and is very expensive.
South Korea's inflation hit a new record in July as prices rose at the fastest pace in nearly 24 years. It was the second month in a row consumer prices have risen on year by more than 6%, which is far higher than the government's target of 2%. Much of the July's increase was driven by a jump in major items on people's grocery lists, like vegetables, which were up nearly 26% from a year earlier. Price of Napa cabbage, used mainly for kimchi, surged by nearly 73%, and there was a similar increase for spinach. The bad weather and high production costs drove fruit prices up too.
There's not a lot of fruit for us to buy, so of course we have to pay more. It's expensive for consumers, but we have no choice but to raise prices.
Given this backdrop, more people are concerned ahead of the Korean Thanksgiving holiday, Chuseok, coming up in early September.
Prices are rising so much, so I'm planning to spend less for Chuseok.
In order to help stabilize people's livelihoods ahead of the Chuseok holiday, the government is going to announce several measures this week. 엄지영, Arirang News.
South Korea's railroad operator has run a promising test of a massive freight train. The new addition is looked to help prop up its revenue. Yoon has the details.
Coming out of the tunnel is a train of cargo cars pulled by 2 electric locomotives at the head. Its heftiness makes surrounding vehicles and even other trains look miniature. This train connecting 50 cargo-only cars is being called the Grand Cargo Train. Reaching 777 meters in length, that's about twice the length of the KTX passenger train, which is 388 meters. A successful test run of the Grand Cargo Train traveled 402.3 kilometers from Obong Station in Uiwang City, Gyeonggi-do Province to Busan Sinhang Station. The cargo cars carried actual export goods and parts, like electronics and car parts that the cargo train would actually be used to transport once it becomes commercialized. Korail said they pushed for the launch of this cargo train as they hope to reverse their annual loss of more than some $152.8 million in logistics. Cargo trains that have been in operation have 33 cars, and expanding the train to 50 cars is expected to improve transportation capacity by 52%.
This train will contribute greatly to resolving our logistics deficit issue. Increasing the efficiency of cargo trains will play a major role in reducing Korail's debt ratio.
Korail will analyze results from the test operation and make any necessary improvements with the goal of putting the Grand Cargo Train into commercialized operation by the first half of 2023. 이은진, Arirang News.
South Korea has been pounded by some of the heaviest rainfall it's ever seen. Another group of heavy rain clouds will be dropping showers again overnight. As the ground has become weaker due to the torrential downpours, the risk of landslides and flooding has significantly risen. In fact, for the Seoul metropolitan area and Gangwon-do province, landslide warning has been raised to the 3rd highest level at Category Alert. Until tomorrow, southern Gyeonggi-do and northern Chungcheong-do provinces will see up to 350 millimeters. The Seoul metropolitan area and the surrounding regions will see another round of heavy downpours of up to 300 millimeters. As rain clouds will move down, southern regions will also see rain. Morning lows in Seoul and Chuncheon will be kicking off at 23 degrees. Daily highs in Seoul will reach 30, Daejeon 28, Gyeongju 33, Jeju will be hot again at 35 degrees. On Thursday, nationwide rain is in the forecast. For the remainder of this week, please take extra precautions against localized flooding. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.